Hello, everyone. This is spiritual teacher and intuitive healer Matthew John here, and I'm super excited for this interview, this show that I'm doing today with author and QHHT practitioner Todd R. Deviney. He is the author of these incredible books, and I'm not exaggerating when I say these are my favorite spiritual books I've ever read in the 10 plus years I've been in this space. Expansion for Ascending Consciousness. This is the first book. And then there's Expansion for Ascending Consciousness book 2. I'm so excited to have Todd on today. Welcome, Todd R. Deviney. Thank you for coming on my YouTube channel here. And I've just got to tell you, a lot of my clients and followers are also really excited about this. I've put out a few mass emails to my following asking for people to submit questions. And I do have some people who have, and a lot of people who, have read the books, because I've been promoting this book to my clients just, in sessions, because I found it so useful and so helpful to help me just understand reality. So a lot of my clients and followers have read this book. A lot of them have expressed their excitement to watch this video when it's up on YouTube. So thank you so much for joining me, Todd. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So first, I just want to start to get to know you, start by getting to know you and kind of figure out who you are, because I'm blown away by these books. Everyone that I know that has read them, all my clients also, they're absolutely blown away, and they kind of say the same things I say, is like, wow, this book is up there. There's some information here you won't find anywhere else. And I'm sitting here with the actual human that is the person who's responsible for putting these on paper. So I'd love to know, just like, who are you? How did you get to this point where you brought this book into existence, and how?
Okay, the first thing I want to say is that I'm a humble messenger. Okay, I'm sharing the information that I've been apparently asked, and part of the reason I'm here is to bring this forward. I didn't know that until about 2017. My life has never really been normal. When I was little, I could feel and kind of hear what the grown-ups were thinking. You have to be in auric proximity. So these were people that were in my home, or I was in there. In elementary school, there were these tests where they were trying to get you to these white and orange blocks. I don't know what they're called anymore, but they would tell you how your parents would be really proud and all of that stuff. And what I remember, once I had a QHHT session and all the blocks were removed, what I remember is that the lady that was proctoring the exam was telling me telepathically how to put the blocks together. And this was the test. This is what they were looking for. And when you're little, you don't realize you're not supposed to be able to do those things. And of course, your parents are in the background thinking, how great your son is, and their son or daughter, whoever's taking these tests. So you are spurred on to do the best you can. Well, that had a block put on me, because apparently they at the time they had programs that you would wind up in if you were selected as one of these gifted children. And there's other people that talk about that, and I don't want to go into that, but
yeah, sure.
So after those tests, I was pretty much just normal. Nothing, I mean, I could drive by houses and I could get a feeling from the house, of kind of the resonance of the house, but pretty much I just lived a normal life.
Sorry to interrupt for a second, but I'm curious, just on that thread, is this something that still persists, like, to this day? Like, when you're in proximity to someone else, can you hear their thoughts or get a sense of what they're thinking?
It's when my clients come for a session, when we have an interview process, there's a conversation that's happening between us at a higher level as we're preparing for the session. Verbally and physically, we're getting to know each other in our aware minds, but unconsciously, we're having a different conversation about what is about to happen in their session.
Do you feel that this is the higher selves of the two people kind of?
Yes. The higher self has various definitions. And in my third
I'm
book, I'm
excited to
going to,
hear. Yeah.
in my third book, I'm going to discuss higher self. The third book's already in process, and
That checks off one of the questions on my list is, will there be a book 3? So there
yes,
we go.
it's
Good.
yeah. Well, actually, I'm supposed to write between 10 and 15 books.
Oh my
It's all up
God.
to me.
Thank you.
There's only going to be
Thank
what's
you.
that?
I said thank you. I'll never run out of things to read. I'm going to absolutely read all of them.
The first book was very quick. The second book, obviously, you can tell by the technicality, it took a lot longer
Yes,
to
very
put that one
technical. Yes.
together. Anyway, let's finish where I was.
Yes, please.
It's my backstory so that we can get past this. In 2015, I started having very vivid dreams, and some of these dreams were historical events. This is in the front of my book, so everybody who's read the book knows that.
Right.
And these dreams are the things that led me to my initial QHHT session.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I was looking around, looking at Dolores Cannon. I found out about her, and I looked for a practitioner, listened to the voice, something that would work for me. And I told my wife, I've got to go do this. I just have to go do this. So in that session, I obviously connected to my higher self, and there was a block that was removed because it was no longer needed. And it was very cagey about what was going to happen. It's like, stay on the path, follow the path, and everything is going to work out for you, because you bring questions to a QHHT session, and basically my higher self is like, those are dumb questions. Oh, you can ask them, go ahead, because it already knew that I was going to be way past these ridiculous little human questions that I had brought to the
ego questions, right?
Yeah. Okay. So then I decided shortly after that, because my life just did a 180 right after that. Everything changed. The energy attunements, the block was removed, the connection, the words started coming through, the thoughts, the ideas, hey, you need to write books and stuff. All of that started coming through. And I was like, I need to become a practitioner so I can provide this to other people as a service. It was such a life-changing thing for me. It was in the session, we all had to practice on each other. The students had to practice sessions with each other. When they put me in, there's a video on my channel, Introduction to a Galactic Consciousness. I dropped into source. I mean, I was at the center of the universe in this plasma energy thing. And it was just like my body was just shaking all over the bed. The practitioner, she was a student. She'd never given one of these before. I was the very first one. And she didn't really know how to respond. So, there's some not so nice comments in that video, but you have to understand, we had never done this before. And this was her first time ever. So, she did the best she could. And as soon as I woke up from it, I'm like, I'm so sorry. Because the energy was so intense that it was very difficult for me to respond normally like I would, it's nice to people. It was like you're being electrocuted for 45 minutes or so. And,
oh my God.
But that connection, that being at the center of this universe and looking out, and at one point she said, do you have any questions or something? The answer was like, I know everything. You can't be this close to God's source and not know everything about everything and be it and be all. And so that connection is where these books are coming from. This connection to that, where I was looking out and I could see the first 12 galaxies that were closest to the center of the universe. Those were the first 12. So whenever you hear people talking about the Council of 12, or that's what this is the connection that they're talking about. The first original 12 galaxies that were ejected directly from God's source. And that's in my book. I talk about those first 12. That's the important stuff. There's Todd, who was the human in ego consciousness growing up, and I really worried about money and jobs and advancement and all of that. And then, like it says in the beginning of the book, I realized I was a dead end. I wasn't going to get anywhere because the money wasn't the happiness. I am way happier now than I have ever been. And
awesome. Good.
I am happiest when I'm sitting behind my computer and I'm writing this information down and I'm trying to put it together in a logical fashion. Now, I don't know what questions you have, but I have an engineering background, which allows me to try and translate what information that is trying to come through. There's obviously a lot of information that I don't have access to. It's blocked from me because that kind of information, they say, would hurt the planet, because we're still children playing in a sandbox here. We still want to build bombs and weapons and hurt each other with them. And we're still
Yeah,
we're still little children. So the technical things that are coming through in my books are all about consciousness. And we understand, those of us that are awake and aware, we understand that the universe is the foundation of the universe is consciousness. So if you can understand the foundation of consciousness, you can put everything else together. You can go into the Hadron Collider and you can see all of these interactions and the little particles that we keep getting smaller and smaller into nothingness. And we can see them spinning helically and making these movements. And they do this for a reason, because it's the foundation of the universe. So.
Yeah, this is, what I'm someone who's very much a scientific thinker. I love astrology, by the way, and I'm going to ask you, about the relationship at some point between astrology and some things. But, I'm a Virgo moon, and I like to look at evidence. I like to look at structure. I like to look at kind of provable theories that will then relate to how things actually are in the world. And I guess one of the biggest things that draws me to your books is that they are so scientific. Even though they're not coming from someone who's a literal scientist, you're the channel for these things. But it seems like whatever source, and tell me if I'm wrong, but whatever source is channeling us through you is very scientifically minded.
So I have been asked to do this, but I get put in session so that I can ask questions. And when I'm in session, the concepts, I can see them. So like the polarity model in the second book, I literally saw that in the universe, in the upward spiral of ascension. And the very first time I saw it, I saw it and I'm like, I'm seeing this weird teardrop.
Is that this model here?
Well, that's the upward spiral, yeah. But then you'll get to the polarity model. Looks like an Ankh from
Yes.
Egypt, ancient Egypt.
The timeline one.
Well, there's one about polarity, but they follow.
I'll find it.
When I first saw that, I didn't quite know what it was. I'm like, I'm seeing this teardrop thing, and it's very colorful, and I could see the two the line coming in and the line coming out. Like, I don't entirely know what I'm looking at. And it takes some time for me to interpret and interpolate and then translate. I think the books are technical because I've been chosen for whatever, however you want to take that, because that I am the one that wants the scientific answers, because I'm not happy with just the fluffy stuff that
me too,
people talk about, because I have read these in the past. Growing up, I wanted deeper understandings, and I read a lot of stuff and I was like, okay, but why? But why? Frequency and vibration.
Right? And how?
What does that mean? I wanted to know what do all these terms mean everyone's throwing around. And I think, we have a language here on Earth, a scientific language. And, a lot of our conventions are arbitrary. They just, we put this line in the sand and then we make a number line from there. And then that one goes that way. And it's very difficult sometimes to see what I'm seeing and then translate it into usable information here on the planet. I have to use my English language because I understand English, and I have to use the scientific terms that we're using here to put it into some kind of context. So what I was told is that I'm doing this to try and engage the the left brain. I get the left brain and right brain confused what they're supposed to be, but the left brain's the analytical side. And
Right.
I'm supposed to be bringing, because of my history, not just in this lifetime, but in many lifetimes past, the warrior analytical aspect out of the third density model and move them
Wow, that's
towards
awesome.
ascension,
Yes.
because there's not a lot of people that are
Yes.
addressing and talking to these people. And that's what I'm supposed to do, because there's a lot of different books out there and some people like different things.
Yeah.
Not everybody's going to like my book because it's too
Oh,
analytical,
technical. Yeah, yeah.
technical, and other people are going to want to hear it a different way and they'll resonate with someone else's information. That's why there's so many different people sharing what they have. It's so that it will resonate with the certain segment
Yeah,
that it's
it's
for.
so cool, isn't it? Like the people that find me through all my social media channels, whatever, and I just constantly hear, oh my God, I love your voice. I resonate with the way you speak. I like and it's so cool. That's why there's room for so many different voices in the age of Aquarius now, as opposed to the dark ages of spirituality, where it was just a very few voices that were the gurus, right?
Well, keep in mind, when we're talking dark ages, they call them dark ages for a reason. It was a very negative polarity on the planet.
Right,
The
right.
blanket was very thick. So for that little drop of candle to drop into this ocean of darkness, it had to be a very strong flame.
Yes, makes
These
sense.
were the people that left their mark because they
Yeah.
were the only ones that could do that.
Yes.
So the blanket is a lot thinner now, so
Mhm.
there's a lot more information coming through. There's a lot more star seeds here. We know
Yes.
what the term is,
Yes.
that have come here to plant the light, to move Earth forward. Earth, the planetary consciousness of Earth is not negatively polarized. It was never meant to be. Negative polarity was brought here. This was not supposed to be a polarized
Was
environment.
it brought here as an experiment?
No, it was brought here on purpose to spread the polarization. Now, my books talk that negative polarity is an artificial construct,
Right.
and for it to have energy, it requires consciousnesses to embrace it, because consciousness generates the negative polarization as
And
it
it
moves.
spins in opposite direction
That's
as
correct.
the positive consciousnesses that are ascending,
That's correct.
descending spiral, right?
It goes into separation. No, it still ascends. They move into fourth density and fifth density. They move into negative constructs.
Isn't there like a ceiling at the top of, like, in the fifth density where, like, the reptilians, for example, right? They're negatively oriented. They have technology and they have abilities, where they can do a lot of things that regular humans can't do, right?
Because they're fourth and fifth density negatives.
But
Yes.
is there a ceiling because it's service to self?
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a ceiling to polarity, overly positive and overly negative polarity. That's in my second book. That's the Ankh model. And when it comes up to the top,
Hmm.
you have to resolve and become neutral again to move into sixth density. And that's where the higher self exists, is in sixth density. And at that
So
point, you
is
look back.
this is the model?
That's correct. That's it right
This
there.
is, people want to follow along. This is figure 31, page 92, book 2.
And you'll see at the very top of that, when the one arrow comes out, that's
Yeah.
sixth density. That's where your higher self comes into play and your true multi-dimensionality begins. And you can look backwards on all the lifetimes you lived, positive and negative. Negative, you're just playing the obstacle. It's just an actor role. It seems very, very terrible to us here. And I've incarnated Todd says, I don't like negative polarity at all. I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want to have anything to do with it. But at the same time, the ascended consciousness understands that it is the obstacle to make us uncomfortable, to force us to ascend, because there have been entire systems of consciousness that stagnate. Even with the awareness of everything that's going on in the universe, they're happy in third density. They like being incarnated. and they like having the experiences of whatever form they're in, and they don't want to move. So the galactic consciousness of this Milky Way galaxy said, hey, you know what? Let's create this obstacle that will force people to move. Well, this is all in the first book. What they didn't understand is that it was going to like unbalance everything, because the negatives would really like being negative. Who would have thought, right? So anyway, I'll stop so that you can ask questions.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. So, the consciousness of the Milky Way galaxy, which is so, and this, a lot of this is explained. Well, it's all explained in the books, right? But I just want to simplify it as best I can. For some people have read part of the book, some people have read none of them, and they're going to read them, etc. So, a galactic consciousness. This is basically the closest you can get of being a separate consciousness, right? A fragmented consciousness from God source, or how would you describe that? Is that pretty accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
So you are existing as a galactic consciousness, which is a term that we're using here, as the consciousness that is creating the systems of planets and everything within its rotation. It is immersed in the full force of God source energy. We would call it the dark web, the energy web, dark matter, whatever you want to call it. This, and when I see it in session, it looks like bone marrow. If you were to look at bone marrow, the hollow, it looks like that. And there's this web, and bigger galaxies, the ones that have more ascension within them, they have a bigger cord attached to them that's going back to the God source through this web to move the energy around to keep the universal rotations in balance. This galactic consciousness has all of the energy of God source at its disposal, of course, from a distance, because too close to proximity to the center of the God source, nothing can exist. And I say that in that first session.
Wow.
It's the energy is too great. It would be the same thing as if we were to try to pilot a ship to the sun.
To the sun. I was on the same thought as you. Yeah.
You can't make it there.
Yeah.
It would just dissolve into nothingness. Yes. Well, the same is true of the center of the universe, but you could imagine its magnitudes more.
Now, the center of so you use the word universe, and one of my main questions is there such thing as a multiverse? Because it's clear from your books, and I've actually been able to prove this because of your books in my past life regression sessions, where we've seen clients in my practice who have been on other timelines in other lifetimes, not the current timeline we're on now. And I'd love to talk to you about that a little bit later. But is there such thing as multiple universes, or is there just one?
Okay, so the second book, it starts out with the origin of Prime Creator.
Right.
And things start slow and move and I don't know why, and I don't know how, but I can see all the way back to that. And I was basically just sharing what I saw in this. Okay, so Prime Creator is the original consciousness. This was the first self-awareness within infinity. And incarnated Todd still has a hard time with infinity, because I expect there to be an end to something. There should always be a boundary somewhere. And when Prime Creator's talking in infinity, I'm like, how can that be? How can it be infinite? And
right.
Why is there not an end? Okay, so but anyway, within Prime Creator, I have been told, and you take it for what it's worth, that there are 18 universes. Oh. And there's a 19th that is in the process of being created. That would be 19. So there would be 19 multiverses. Okay, now in each one of those universes, there are trillions of systems of planets that have life upon them, and multiple timelines on each one of those planets. When you start to contemplate the magnitude
I know,
of multidimensionality there, when you say multiverse, it is literal in the fact that there are multiple universes within Prime Creator, and each one has a multitude of timelines upon their. Well, now once you get into 6th density and incarnation ends on a planet, all of the timelines reconcile. and it stops. There's no more incarnation because you've reached the energy capacity of the planetary consciousness, and you have to maintain balance. And at that point, everything moves into sixth density. So from our perspective on Earth, if we were to look at a Venus, for example, is a sixth density planetary consciousness. It's a rock. There's nothing on it. And we can see that the sun has gotten so hot now that nothing could live on it anyway. But when Venus was a planet that had beautiful life and oceans and all of that on it, the sun was not nearly as hot as it is now. And Venus was a planet that was full of incarnation, and they've all moved into sixth density, and they channel quite a bit to the people here on Earth. I don't know if the people that are channeling the planetary consciousness of Venus, I'm be careful not to give it a name, know who they're talking to, but they are talking to a lot of people here that are reaching out for them.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw those, like, and I don't know the authenticity of it, but just around social media, there were supposedly leaked CIA documents that said that Tesla was a Venusian reincarnated being or something.
I didn't read those. I read something about Tesla was channeling a Martian collective or something like that. I don't know, and I don't know the validity or authenticity of that. So I can't speak to that.
No, that's okay. So when the timelines, and this is like probably what we'll spend a lot of time on, because we want to bring it to how we can figure out this whole ascension process on Earth. But when eventually all the separate timelines that are running through this experience ascend, they all have, like, every timeline has to ascend, right?
Yes.
Okay. So do you have any idea how many, is it accurate to view timelines as being stacked on top of one another?
Yes.
Or if we were to spread it out like train tracks, and you could incarnate at different points on the train track, say behind me is past, in front of me is future, and as a soul I can look above. I can say incarnation here on track A, here on track B. Is that somewhat accurate?
Somewhat. Now, what is the question? Because my first book talks about timelines. If we were to go to and I'm going to say the Hadron Collider, because that's the biggest thing we've got that's smashing particles into nothingness. If we were to go there.
By the way, one of my clients is going to be thrilled because she worked at the Hadron Collider.
Oh, good.
So
if we were to, and I think I say this in my book, if we were to smash these things into their constituents, and we could actually add energy to them instead of, accelerating them in speed wise, if we could actually add energy to their their spin, we would watch them increase in speed until they disappeared. And the question would be, at that point, where'd they go? They went to a different timeline. If you speed them up. So,
I see. Okay.
When we're talking, and if we were to incorporate the planetary chakras, if we were to talk about grid points, and that's in my second book, we were to talk about grid points of the planet, the planetary consciousness of Earth, this is its body, the physical planet.
Okay.
And it is manifesting its body through these chakras in the planetary grid. Each timeline is held in place by the planetary grid, and the only thing that's changing is the energy signature of these timelines. So, if we were digging a gold mine in this timeline, it is not going to create a hole in a different timeline that people go, hey, look, there's a hole here. That's not how that works. And it's very hard and very easy to discredit or not discredit, but ignore and say that's preposterous, because there's a few people on the planet who know what they're talking about when they're talking about timelines, but that information is not general knowledge to people like us.
Certainly not. I mean, I didn't really think of it, in the way that you describe in the books before I read the first book. I always believed that there's just one timeline, and this is it. We just have to ascend and we're done. But I didn't understand until I read your books. the idea that there are multiple timelines and that they actually will separate and branch off and new ones will be created. I find that very fascinating. Do you have any idea how many timelines there are right now?
No, I don't have a clue. I know that there's some of our more interesting experiences, like the Vikings and the Romans, and I always use those two because I have memories of those lifetimes that I can remember in this lifetime. So I always use those. If this lifetime of yours ended now, whenever you die, and you go into your healing process and you get done, you review, you pass life review and all that stuff, and you get ready to make your next lifetime. If you want to be a Viking, you can, it's still there. You can go be one. If you want to be a Roman, go be one. Now, the history of what's going on, what we remember, there's going to be different actors there. So the history is going to change. So when you're in a different timeline, it'll be a different history, because each history that we're in, when we incarnate, there's this snapshot of history that goes out behind us. That's just this one little timeline. That's not all of them. And as I state in the books, if you were prominent in a historical timeline, you're going to want to reincarnate, if you're going to reincarnate into the future, where you exist in that previous timeline, because you help create what's here now. So
I want to share on that point. I have had several clients over the years. I do a lot of past life regressions. I have had several clients that have seen themselves as famous people. It's rare. One client of mine, we saw a lifetime where she pretty clearly was Moses. And then another one, Michelangelo was another one, or no, Leonardo da Vinci, not Michelangelo. Leonardo da Vinci was another one. Actually, someone who had already passed on. But I got the sense, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, that these historical figures were so significant and had so much energy to them that many souls passed through the experience of being them in order to get a taste of what that's like. So we can't say that there's only one reincarnation of Jesus or Moses or Leonardo da Vinci or Elvis or whatever, that there could be many, because they're just different souls passing through, kind of using that figure to have an experience. What would your thoughts be on that?
So these historical figures, they have a very high energy signature. I agree with that. The energy is recorded in the planetary consciousness. This is what the term Akashic records means. Some people in sessions, and I have given sessions where this happens, they identify as these people. And I'm not going to say whether they were or they weren't those people. I've had more than one client who has been the same person. And that brings up this question of, well, who was the real one? Now, the one thing, anyone can read an energy. Okay, we can put a Led Zeppelin cassette tape into the tape deck and it'll play that song. And it doesn't matter if it's your cassette player or my cassette player. And I'm dating myself by saying a cassette tape, but
Okay.
I'm trying to use a magnetic
Yeah,
energy.
sure.
Okay, so, and you can listen to the song, but there was only one person who had the emotion of actually playing that song. And only John Bonham's dead. The other three guys are still alive in Led Zeppelin, but only the actual person who was John Bonham is going to have the full emotional context. And I say that because I was a famous person in Rome, and the session when I was murdered, and history doesn't record that I was murdered, but I was murdered, and the tears were just streaming down my eyes into my ears, and I couldn't move. And if you could imagine water running into your ear, how actual, you just want to stick your fingers in your ears. And I couldn't do it because I was in session. The emotion that just racked me, and even after the session, I was just sobbing uncontrollably sometimes, and my wife is like, "Are you okay?" Because I don't know that this is normal. I'm like, I've got to process this. This is why I had this session is so that this unfinished energy could resolve itself within me. And then I could move forward into writing the books and everything else. So I still had all this unresolved stuff, trauma, I guess. I would I would say, okay, and this is just my own perspective as a practitioner, to watch for the emotional cues. If the person is reliving this life and there's not a lot of emotional involvement in the person. I mean, I just gave a session not very long ago to someone who was in a horrific past life that he was not comfortable with, and he woke himself up. I mean, the emotion was so strong in him that he's like, I don't want to do this, and he woke up. And I had never had that happen before. I'm like, wow, okay. So if you're a practitioner and you're giving these sessions and these people are famous and whatever, obviously they need this for whatever reason. Their higher self is showing them this, and they need this for the reconciliation of whatever's going on in their lifetime. If there's not a lot of emotional involvement in it, if they aren't like crying or whatever in some of the scenes that should be very emotionally involved, I would say that they are probably reading a cassette tape. They're reading the energy and they're sharing in the experience, not necessarily were that person in that lifetime.
Okay, so in your experience of and your understanding of things, you don't think that it's possible for multiple souls to live through the experience, because you don't think that that's a possibility?
Multiple souls could be in that timeline, not in that specific timeline, but in variations of that timeline. If that happens, there's going to be different experiences. They're not going to be historically accurate to this timeline. One of them will be, and the other ones will not be.
So what you're saying is if there's like, 1,000 versions of a timeline where there's Moses, then there's 1,000 different souls that could have experienced that.
Man, that is difficult. Yes, that's how it would be. However, from my perception, there was only one actual Moses, and the other people are going to be different a little bit. They probably are not going to be called Moses. They may bring down the same information and do similar things,
but slightly different because it's a slightly different timeline.
That's right. It's going to be slightly different on the timeline. It's something, it's not going to be accurate to the record. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking of Back to the Future when they keep going back and forth and just like little things change. Are you familiar with Back to the Future, those movies?
Of course. Come on, I'm old enough. I saw that in the theater.
When it changes from Twin Pines Mall to Lone Pines Mall, and just subtle little differences.
Yep.
So that could be a real thing. Interesting. Yeah, one of the things I definitely want to ask you about, and while we're on it, is that idea of multiple souls, because I'll just share you the work that I do. Not only do I do past life regressions, but actually more of the work I do is seeing where someone's soul is from, whether they're an earth seed or a star seed. And your first book, helped tremendously to help me understand the energetic differences between an earth seed and a star seed. And to see, because a lot of times people are from multiple places, and I have to try to piece it together for them. And a lot of times, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, but a lot of times, for example, I see that someone, it's a more linear hierarchical progression. Maybe, they were a Pleiadian being and a Sirian being and an Arcturian being, kind of progressing through an ascension experience, but just on different places. Then other times, and I do believe myself to be one of the cases, where there's I'll bring out my board here. It's like one aspect, maybe was here, the Pleiades, Sirius, Arcturus, Arcturus, etc. And then there's another aspect, let's say coming from Orion's belt, for example, that's also an aspect of the Earth self here. And this is why someone resonates very closely with several different places. And And these, a lot of times the people aren't like even bringing it up to me. I'm just seeing it for them. Sometimes they do already know, but sometimes I'm just seeing these different connections for them. And I see pretty clearly that there's more than one soul, more than one extraterrestrial consciousness that is acting through the earth consciousness that's been created. Is that something that you found as a possibility?
Oh, absolutely. So my book talks about fragmentation.
Right.
Now, an eighth density consciousness or 10th or a galactic consciousness can fragment into as many fragments as it wants. And in my very first session, the practitioner asked something about something, and my response was, he's in 27 bodies right now, which one of them is this one. Okay, so if you are a fragment of a galactic consciousness, and your galactic consciousness has sent out 27 fragments, one of my fragments was some kind of squid looking thing that was going to talk to me, and I didn't like that. I was like, a squid, get out of here, that's stupid, I don't want to be a squid. So they showed me on a council at escaping me where it was now, Alpha Centauri, the Alpha Centauri system. I'm on a council there, and so I went to talk to them instead, and I was like, oh yeah, this is better, because I didn't want to talk to my squid self, because that was foreign to Todd's ego here. So it would make sense that if you have a consciousness in session, or you are a consciousness that is multiple fragments of a higher consciousness, you are going to have access, because you're in co-resonance with all of them, because you all have the same baseline signature. You are all going to be in co-resonance, and it could get a little confusing when you're trying to track that back.
Right.
It goes in like 27 different places, but they all go back to the same original consciousness if you look far enough.
If you look far enough, it goes back to this. Oh, wow, that might be a new piece that I didn't understand. So you're saying, like, for example, 12 years ago or 10 years ago, I figured out I'm a Syrian starseed. As soon as I read the term starseed, I looked up different possibilities. I knew right away I'm from Sirius. Okay, that's one aspect of myself. Then later on, I had just these emotional, regressions to, seeing things in Orion's belt and the Orion Wars, and I knew I was a part of that too. And then I figured out there's a part of me that's actually even more advanced than the Syrian or the Orion part of me, that's coming from the Andromeda galaxy. And then I figured, oh, that's actually the highest aspect of me. And I kind of trace it down that to the Syrian being and Orion being. And perhaps there's another aspect of me as a blue avian that's maybe the secondary soul. I'm not too sure about it. But so you're saying if that's the case, like, let's say I had like that one track and then the other track, they would all go back to, would it be a being, like an Andromedan being, or would it go back to something like a system or a planet or a galaxy?
It's going to be a system of, not a planet, it's going to be a system or a galaxy, because you have to have the density to fragment multiple times.
So now, okay, now can an individual, like, can just an individual incarnate on a planet in the Sirius star system fragment?
If it's incarnated, no.
Well, okay,
so you have to be at 6 density at least to fragment. If you're below 6 density, you are going to be going through the lifetimes that you're in. But see, it's 6 density, you're going to have your oversoul, and then you're going to have that little piece of you, and that's going to be there. And at the same time, we have to get into multidimensionality here, and we have to start talking about, at 6 density, once you hit multidimensionality, you can look back at all your lifetimes. It's like looking at a track through gelatin, like a bunch of bugs make a track in gelatin, they like wiggle through it, or worms, whatever you want to call it. All of these little lines that brought you to 6 density, you can see them all now, because you're in multi-dimensional space. And time, it's from this, I saw this one Doctor Who episode where he said, timey-wimey, spacey, wacy. I mean, that is so appropriate when you're trying to discuss multidimensionality to it, and it's difficult for me as an incarnated human to say, once I hit sixth density, I can look back at all of my other incarnations, and then I can start talking to myself and giving myself pointers and helping myself out here and there. And I'm like, I can? And that's in the third book, and I haven't got that yet. So that information is still, it's like right here, and I can reach out to it, and I'm starting to put it into the, but it's still a little foggy, and I'm trying to put that together yet. So I don't want to go too far into that,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Let me share, if you don't mind, while we're on this track, like, some of the things that I do in my sessions, and I've always tried to relate, because I trust so much in your information, to try to relate your information in a way to the work that I do. Um, I do these sessions called Starseed Discovery Sessions. I put someone under regression, and we have them taken to either their home planet or their place of origin. So, for example, someone will end up on a planet in the Sirian star system. Maybe it's a water planet. They see themselves as a mer person, living underneath water. Maybe they're on one of the Sirian land planets. And if you've seen the Sirian planets, they have those beautiful crystal buildings and the crystal cities and the crystal caves, and everything is made out of crystal, and it's beautiful, and there's kind of a blue hue, and the people are blue. And I have hundreds of clients that have had similar experiences, like on Sirian planets, and I have many clients that have similar experience on Pleiadian planets, and I keep a log of all of this stuff, and so much of it matches up. And I want to be like a galactic researcher in my work, as well as providing a service to my clients to try to figure this all out. So we see a client that exists, a piece of them exists on this other place, let's say on a Sirian planet, but they're existing simultaneously on Earth, and there's some sort of mission that their Sirian self wanted for them to accomplish here on Earth during the Ascension times. And we see it usually as kind of like a simultaneous existence, yet from the perspective of Earth, it's existing in the future. And from the perspective of that Sirian self, this is in the past from there. And well, let me just stop there and get your thoughts on that.
I would, from what you're describing, I would say that it is, the Sirian is fragmented and sent a portion of itself here to assist in the ascension.
Right,
And
right, which is what I thought, but you had said that an individual incarnated cannot fragment. That's where I'm confused.
if you are on the ascension path, if you're on in a planetary consciousness, and you're moving up from first density, until you reach sixth density, you are unable to fragment.
Okay.
So my point was that if you are still in fifth density, if that's all you are unable to fragment into anything else until you reach sixth density in the planetary collective of wherever your ascension path is, wherever your co-resonance is. Then at that point, you can fragment back in, and you can come to Earth, or you can restart, or you can go wherever else. I mean, these are all games of experience, and
Right, right.
like going to the mall, and not mall, but I mean going online and picking a video
I
game out.
literally was describing that to a client yesterday. It's like some piece of you somewhere else is going to GameStop, and it's like one of the games you can purchase is Earth. And wow, look at this. They have
Yes.
World Wars, and there's
Yeah.
COVID, and there's reptilians at the center of the planet running everything. And you can die at any moment. Isn't this interesting? Let's play this game, right?
Yeah.
And I love how you describe it in your first book. It's like, imagine that, that galactic consciousness looking through like a magazine of like different places that you can go, and you say, oh, Earth, doesn't this look interesting, right?
Yeah, but okay, you also have to be really, really careful about recruiters, because they have a really good line for you on the other side when you're in the healing process and you're getting ready to make a decision. Because I was recruited and made a bad decision and wound up fighting a war in a different sector of the galaxy for a couple thousand years. And at some point, like a consciousness mercenary, and I'm in this area with all of the other people, and we're in these engineered bodies, and there's this little insignia on my spacesuit, and I'm trying to describe what it is, and it says, "This is who I am and what I represent," and it says I'm from Earth, and everybody around me is like, "Whoa, you're from Earth," because there's so much going on here, you know. And in that sector of the galaxy, that was like, "Wow, you're from Earth. Who would want to go there?
What do
Who'd
you
want to
mean
be
by
there?"
recruiter? I'm confused.
So, from what I recall, all right, I was murdered and in the Roman lifetime, and I had a lot of strategy, battle strategy stuff. I was a really good commander, and they needed that in that sector of the galaxy. They were trying to fight negative polarity from the way it was explained to me. And I agreed to go over there and use my skill to help overcome this hive mind insectoid thing. And whatever, it's really kind of far-fetched, but it is what it is. And before I was making my decision on what to do, this entity, it was just, consciousness, because we're not in incarnated bodies, talked me into, and there's contracts, and I'm still having a hard time. How do you sign a contract as consciousness? There's a contract and you have to fulfill it. So I had to go over there, and I couldn't leave until we actually won this war. I couldn't leave. But when I won the war, I got to do whatever I wanted because I was pretty much discharged from the whatever it was. And I came here for this lifetime, and I'm like, well, then why am I not like a rock star or something? Anyway, so there are recruiters.
If you were a rock star, you would have no use to the world.
Exactly right. Yes, I understand that, but little ego Todd is like, that would be much more fun.
I wanted to be a rock star too. I want my idol when I was a teenager in 20s was Billy Joe Armstrong of Green Day, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. I would love to be him.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, there was, and my higher self was like, it was a really dumb decision. It wasn't the right path. I shouldn't have gone down it, and I couldn't get out until I fulfilled the contract.
So you're saying that even when you're not in the body and you're in the between life stage, you can make quote unquote not wise choices. Is that what you're saying?
I apparently so. And when you talk about soul contracts, and these people that are talking about all these soul contracts, before I had that information come to me, I would not have believed that at all. I would have totally found that to be untruth, that you could make a contract in consciousness and have to hold up to it because it doesn't really fit the bill of what we would consider as a contract. You sign this thing like a marriage contract or a business contract, or whatever it is, but they do exist. Energetic contracts exist.
What do you think? Sorry to interrupt, but I have several clients that believe they're members of the SSP, and the stuff they tell me, the dreams they've had and the regressions they've done. I mean, it seems like it's a real thing, and a lot of them are of German descent. Most of them are of German descent, and from what I can see, is these are people that in other lifetimes they had actually worked with the Nazi Party and had actually worked with extraterrestrial technology. And then to pay that karmic debt, they agree to this contract to be a part of the SSP in this lifetime. What do you think about the possibility of that?
Well, obviously, I don't have any firsthand knowledge about any of that, but however, I do have firsthand knowledge with that test that happened when I was in elementary school, where they were looking for gifted people. And my higher self said that had I passed that test, they put the block on me so that I would just not pass the test and just be let go. But had I passed that test, that I would have been in a program. So I would say that the programs do exist based upon that, which is my own personal experience. I can't speak to anybody else's experience, whether it's true or false, but I mean, it's as plausible as anything else. Secret space program, sure. I mean, our country and governments in this planet keeps secrets from each other at every turn.
So, and so basically, so these people, they feel like that a piece of themselves is simultaneously being used as some sort of soldier or whatever in another realm, and they see it during their dream time, and they feel it. And some of them come from parents that like weren't supposed to get pregnant, they had vasectomies or whatever, and or some of them have had children after they weren't supposed to get pregnant. Weird
Yeah,
stuff.
that's me. Yep, that's me. I wasn't supposed to be here.
Really?
I'm the impossible kid. Yep, that's me.
Yeah, I've had clients like that too, and it's interesting. And it's like I just I would wonder how, like in the model of, and we definitely got to talk about the idea of the toroidal field. Um, how would, in the model that you understand reality to be, like how would someone's consciousness be being used without the person, actually kind of experiencing it directly in their waking life, except maybe seeing glimpses in regression sessions or in sleep time, dream time.
Because they're being used in sleep time. They're not being used in their waking life.
So it's only their astral body that's
Well,
being.
that's one possibility, and the other possibility is that there's this concept of 20 and back program where they age regress you or
Yeah,
whatever.
right. Yeah.
I don't have any information on that,
Sure,
whether it's
sure.
true or not. But I mean, you would be living this lifetime, and then you get age regress back, and you
And
get
then
to
you
live
just
your
don't
regular,
remember it.
and you
Right.
don't remember
And
it.
I've
So
had clients who have been abductees of the Greys, right? Which is, it's some pretty terrifying stuff. And it's a very physical feeling. It's a visceral experience that they experience being on the ship with the Greys, but they never actually left their bed. And it's almost like it's this like in between world between the waking world and the astral world that the abduction actually takes place.
again, I can't speak that I've never been abducted. I don't.
Yeah,
I
you
mean, I
don't want to
can't.
be. Neither have I, but
No, of
I,
course not. Um, I
no, but I have clients who vividly describe this sort of stuff to me, and I know it's very real. Um,
I I have read stories where people are phased out. They're phased so that they can go through walls and stuff. That's a fourth and fifth density capability to
okay.
phase people and move them
Mm.
through solid objects and that sort of thing.
So
And
it's
they would
basically
actually be on the ship. But again, this is just things that I've read. It's not
so
anything I've
I'm
experienced.
guessing it's like it's collectives that are at the fourth or fifth density, whether they're service, like the Greys and the Reptilians are obviously service to self, but even so, they can still be at that fourth or fifth density where they can have certain technologies that they can
Absolutely.
interact with consciousness, whether in the astral or in the physical, and where they can manipulate, do genetic manipulations, right?
Well, now it's not just the technology that they have. As your consciousness gains density and energy, you have an expanded capabilities within the universal realm. You have access to begin harnessing universal energy and transmuting the physical. So they may be helping themselves with some of the technology, but they are at a point in consciousness where they can start to manipulate the material. And
Why
at
are
sixth
they
density, you're completely there.
so why are they, and this, a lot of my clients wonder this sort of stuff after reading your book or listening to me speak or whatever. Why are negatively oriented consciousness, quote unquote, allowed to have these higher technologies, these higher abilities, when they're in service to self and they're causing destruction rather than ascension?
Okay, so in in the beginning of this polarity experiment, it was
And this is
expected.
only in our galaxy. Is that what you have
That
received?
is that is my understanding.
Okay.
Yes, it is just this galaxy, and that was from the time where I was there at the God source in that session. I was like, Earth is far, far, far away from here, and then I got to explain polarity to you because they're the galactic consciousness that did this. I didn't do this. We didn't create polarity. This consciousness did that. Okay, so in this galaxy, there is polarity. And again, it's meant to be an obstacle to ascension, that we would find it repugnant and would want to ascend beyond it. And in that regard, it has been extremely successful. However, it was expected that the negative polarity, that we would all experience different facets of it to maintain balance. We would experience the negative polarity, we'd be the detractor for a while to help ascension, and then we would awaken to the fact that the only way forward is unity, to get back into the universal energies, and we would move back into the positive after playing the negative actors. What happened is that these negatives went negative, and it's addictive, and it was once you get highly negative, sometimes you want to stay there and you don't want to come back. And it began to imbalance the galaxy. This is all in my first book.
Right.
And it had to be reconciled. Sure, obviously the universal consciousness could just, blink an eye, if it had an eye. I mean, just the flip of the switch and all of this would be done. But why would you do that if the whole idea of individualized consciousness is the experience of self with other selves? This is a wealth of experience that had never even been considered before. The destruction of consciousness, other destroying, overcoming, and pushing your will upon these people, and all of that. It's being allowed, but it's also being rectified now. So a lot of what you're hearing about, these stories of the Orion Wars and the Reptilian War and all of that stuff, is in multi-dimensional space, historical in nature, that it is already occurred, and that a rectification is already underway.
Okay.
As incarnated humans, it still looks like we're awash in it. The world is really tumultuous at the moment, and all of these things are going on, and the people that are awake are like, why is this even still happening? Won't someone come here and just wave a magic wand and let's all move into unity? That's coming. It's coming. The wave, the event, the new earth, the shift, whatever you want to call it, it's coming. Not in time, not at the rate that we all want it to. But understand that if everyone on this planet, or 90% of the people on this planet, woke up tomorrow morning and we're all in unity, and we're all in unity, kind of love and harmony, it would shift.
Our free will would speed it up.
It would shift like that.
Yeah, because we're all just puzzle pieces, and we're contributing to the field always, our level of consciousness, right? So
it is a co-creational construct.
Right. Which is isn't this how the timeline split? Because it's based on the direction of that the collective decides to take, the unconscious kind of umbrella, if you amalgamate it all, right, of what the consciousness is kind of what vibration we're at, right? Isn't that what directs the timeline?
Well, now timelines split because a portion of the collective doesn't want to follow the other portion of the collective. That's why it splits, because the collective is no longer unified. It splits because one wants to go positive and one wants to go more negative, and they do that. They're just like, they break off, and the timelines are split.
Are we in it? This is one of the biggest questions I think everyone wants to know. Are we in a timeline split right now?
No, we're in a timeline. Timelines are merging. They're not splitting. The timelines are merging. So we are about to. We have gone through several mergings because we're on an ascension pathway. All right, this collective is ascending. We are moving into the fourth density, fifth dimension. Okay, so let's talk about that for just a second before we continue with our splits. Okay, so when people say fourth density, fifth dimension, that sort of thing, we need to clarify that. So we live in a fourth dimension right now. There's length, width, height, and then there's another one, time. That's the fourth dimension that we're living in right now. When we move into the new ascending construct, there's a new dimension, a new coefficient that, and this is part of the third book, so you're getting that early. There's a new coefficient that's coming up. That's the next dimensional concept, which is the density of consciousness that pushes us into the fifth dimension, fourth density of consciousness. So This was the last interview that I was on. Magenta Pixie said, no, it's a fifth dimension, fourth density. And I was like, you're right. But I didn't talk to that. She stated that, but so there we go. We're in the fourth dimension right now, third density. And when we move into fourth density of consciousness, we'll be in the fifth dimension because that new coefficient of conscious energy comes into play. All right, so let's talk about timelines. There's a lot of talk, right? The Berenstein Bears, and there's all these other.
I wanted to ask you about this, and I literally just did a show about this a couple weeks ago. You probably
all of these. What do they call them? Butterfly effect?
The Mandela effect. The Mandela.
Okay, the Mandela effect. Yeah, but wasn't there some dragon butterfly effect movie about
the butterfly effect? The butterfly effect is the theory. This is a time travel theory where it's like the Back to the Future model of time travel, where if you go back in time, anything that you do will end up affecting the future. And if I'm not wrong, your books actually disprove that and say that, like, if you were to get in a time machine, like I can't get in a time machine, go back and kill Hitler, right? No one can do that because it's already been written in stone in the timeline, correct?
That's right. Okay, so if you go back in time and there's a Hitler there and you kill him, you've affected whatever timeline you're in, because you're not going to be in this one. This one's already done. This one's done. So you're going to go back to one that's still in play.
So if there's a Hitler to a different timeline, if with like have you heard of the Montauk Project, for example, the CIA?
Yeah, I don't know too much about that, but I am familiar with the name.
It'd be probably interesting for you to read the book on that was written, that describing all the crazy stuff they did with time travel and other things, and opening up dimensional portals and things like that.
I've been asked not to read any material because of what I'm bringing through, and when I'm writing these books,
I can see why.
So once the books are written, I'll get email from people that said, this talks about like something that's in this other book. I'm like, well, okay, well, that's just verification because I have not read any other material. This is just information coming through. So it's not like I read something and it went seated in my subconscious. I create.
Yeah, that's good. That makes a lot of sense.
So let's go back to what we were talking about, because this is an important concept.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are in an ascending timeline here. We are moving into fourth density, fifth dimension. Okay. So leading up to that separation, there are a lot of timelines that are close, that are similar, that need to merge with ours. And I think the second book talks about mergings and how they occur. That's in the second book.
What section of the book is that?
I couldn't tell you. So these mergings have been occurring as we're leading up, and these are going to be the Mandela effects that we're seeing. That's why.
So they are real. Okay, I was wondering what you're going to say to that.
There's going to be a few inconsistencies. There are the weavers, the grid weavers that are putting all of this together, that are trying to.
This is the timeline merging model.
There you go.
Right? Yeah.
Okay, so they're merging because we're getting ready to go into the ascending construct. So there are some mergings.
Page 147 for people in book 2
that are occurring now. When the shift happens, those that are still highly negative aren't going to be here anymore. There's going to be, so the mergings are occurring before the shift, and then there's going to be this split where those that still need third density experiences are going to continue to have them, and the fourth density consciousnesses are going to move forward into the ascending construct. And there's going to be a distinct delineation that explains why consciousness is missing in both of these constructs. So there'll be like something that
worldwide event.
Something is coming, and I try not to talk about it. I can kind of see it, but I don't want to talk about it because fear isn't something that I project. I don't want that in anything that I talk about. So there'll be an experience, and all of the people that are on the ascending timeline are going to have a mild experience, because we're already unifying. We're already wanting to move into unity. And those that are still in separation in the third density construct are going to need a much more a much larger experience to bring them together as a world consciousness, so that they all have to work together to overcome what has happened in their reality, so that they can all come together and stop fighting.
Now,
and
is
stop
this, sorry
all
to
this
stop
other
you for a
stuff.
second, but is this all happening like all these different times? Is it all happening in the same playing field? Meaning, like, is right now, if we look in the world, are all these timelines existing and we can, there's people in these different timelines, even though we can physically see them? Or are these literal separate realities?
Now, if you can see these people,
Then it's the same
if you
timeline.
can observe
Okay,
them, they're in this timeline.
clarify that.
If they were in a separate timeline, we would have no knowledge that they even exist. Okay, so everybody has the ability to create their own reality within the construct of what they came here to learn in this lifetime, the lessons that they came for, the balance and experiences they came for. They have the ability to create their own reality. These people that are preparing for the end of the world, they are creating their reality. If they're preparing for the end of the world, and they're absolutely certain that that's going to happen to them, we already know which timeline they're going to be in.
A lot of people talk about this idea of moving from the carbon-based DNA to the crystalline DNA, right? From the third to the fifth dimension. The idea of our organs transforming, the idea of really becoming immortal. What is your information or ideas about that whole transition from carbon-based to crystalline?
I've been asked this question before, and in fact, I think it's even in the first book. It talks about evolution of the human species. There are jumps that occur, and those jumps are usually synonymous with energy flashes that are coming from our system star, which would be our sun. Evolution, however, is usually very slow. We're talking many generations for the bodies to change and mutate and stuff. Evolve, not mutate. Let's not use those terms. Yes, there is a crystalline aspect to an ascended consciousness. However, the consciousness has to ascend first, and then the energy from the consciousness comes into the body and starts to realign the body, because the body is the physical template of the conscious energy.
Right.
So your energetic template within your consciousness is what is making this body, within the the limitations of the genetics of your parents and a few other things. But for the most part, your consciousness is manifesting this body for you, and you can manifest a very healthy body, and you can manifest a body with disease. And that's all a part of what you've come here to learn, because as a regression therapist, that sometimes we can help people and remove some of their problems, and other times we're not allowed to, because it's what they came here to experience. We're not allowed to change that.
And every shade in between. Sometimes you can help a little bit, and then
That's right.
The other 90% is really up to them.
So the crystalline structure of a body, I agree with that. However, a doctor is still going to be able to take a piece of you. Even
one of my clients was asking this, and I thought it'd be so fascinating. Like, can we see in medical science a change happening? We cannot. Why?
Because it's slow. It's very slow. It is a slow process.
Okay.
Now, I can't tell you
what about 50 years from now or 100 years from now, for example. What do you think?
We will probably be a little different. Yeah. And that's a lot of that has to do with we change when the earth changes to continue viability. And the earth is going through some changes now. The earth is moving into a higher density as a planetary consciousness. And when it does that, the entities that are upon it have to shift with it to move forward. So there is going to be some changes. However, I don't think anybody watching this video is going to be able to go to the doctor and see any physical changes, and they're still going to see the same human physiology. It happens over generations. And once the shift comes, when that event happens, and that wave that I've seen and so many other people have seen hitting the planet, it shifts everything from one minute to the next. I don't know what happens
So,
after
so
that.
you do see, because this is something that I've and it's great. We all have different perspectives on things, but I've debunked over the not debunked. That's not the correct word. I've had a different perspective over the years on the idea of an instant event or shift, and because it's something that has been, if you read channeled books from the 90s, this was what was predicted for the year 2000, or between that time of 93 and 2003. Cataclysms on the planet, pole shifts, instant events. Then people predicted it in 2012. Then people predicted it in 2020. And it keeps getting pushed back. And almost like, preachers that keep putting out new dates for the end of the world. It's just the same sort of thing is the way I see it. I've always thought that this will be more of a not a smooth transition, but it's something that will take a length of time, and there'll be a lot of bumps in the roads and ups and downs rather than an instant event where everyone is transformed, because I feel like that would remove the burden of the lessons that we're supposed to learn as a collective on this planet, which is exactly why I believe that the positive extraterrestrials like the Sirians, Arcturians, Pleiadians, etc., cannot and do not interfere with our affairs on this planet, other than transmitting frequencies via the sun into our planet for us to utilize as we will. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that perspective.
Personally, I have seen from my very first session, actually back in 2016, I saw these energetic waves coming through the system star into our system, and they were impacting the planet, and that black inky looking stuff was blowing out of the atmosphere of the planet, which would be the negative polarity, was being eradicated from the planet with this overpowering energy wave. And it was, the waves got really big, boom, 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 came across the planet, and the stuff was breaking up, and then the waves receded, and the earth was shiny. And my exact words were, and the earth is like, I'm here. And
is it possible that's a metaphor? And I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Is it possible that's a metaphor?
I have no idea. This is what I saw. And actually I pulled back. I didn't have the universal view at that point. I was still looking from a system. The system, I pulled back. I saw the system of planets, and I saw the sun pulsing through the entire solar system, and then it receding. But this was not just something that happened in our solar system. This was a galactic event, and the changes were going through all of the system stars, and polarity was ending at that point. The experiment was being ended because it was it's not that it was a poor experiment, it's that the maintenance required to keep this galaxy in balance with the polarized experiences did not outweigh the benefit of the experience that was being gained from everybody on both sides.
Is it possible, Todd, sorry to interrupt, that pulsing has already happened or began, and we're seeing it play out right now, but because of our linear time experience, we see it playing out over a number of decades rather than in an instant?
I think like a diver who goes very, very deep in the ocean and is breathing nitrox and is down there for any length of time, he must stop at certain levels and decompress before he comes back to the surface of the light, right? He goes down into the depths of separation, and they have to stop at certain levels and decompress. I would suggest, okay, that we have been decompressing ourselves by bringing the dark up into the light, and we don't like what we're looking at because we've been very ugly to each other for a very long time, and that we are slowly decompressing ourselves from this very dark polarized experience, and eventually there will be one final pulse, and we're all going to be above the water, and we can take the respirator out of our mouth, and we can breathe in unity consciousness.
Okay.
It's just one analogy.
I yeah, maybe. Look, I'm open to all possibilities. I looked at the predictions from the channel books 30 years ago, and they're the same. And
well, now
they never happened.
Understand when when I ask, when is something going to happen?
Yeah.
The response is, how should we know? You're creating this reality. It's not up to us. It's up to you. So when we have these false predictions from forever ago that, you know, it was supposed to happen then, but then it's going to happen now, and then it's going to happen now, and then it's going to happen now, and then it's going to happen like 10 years from now, or 2036, or 2047, or I think it's the fact that nobody really knows. We're in a collective creation, and that whenever this big final pulse is, if there is one, is not up to us. And it's not something that's being shared with us, because otherwise we just sit back and go, well, I'll just wait for that.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. Which
You
is
know?
the big problem I've had with it all along. It seems like it completely, okay, like Atlantis and Lemuria, right? We couldn't figure out how to live as a collective and not fuck everything up. We did for a while, but in the end we fucked it all up. And I know it wasn't our fault. It was the negatively oriented consciousnesses that were at the top of the pyramid in Atlantis and a little bit in Lemuria, at least my understanding, right? But okay, so the planet got destroyed. We kind of started anew a little bit. And then we get to this point in the 26,000 year cycle again. And it's like, again, we're at that crossroads of, are we going to ascend this time, or are we going to fuck it all up again? And it just seems to me that outside of having some safeguards in place, which I do believe exist, like no nuclear wars, for example, as a rule. I don't know if you believe that. But other than that, I don't see the use in the whole, just take into account that we need as a collective human race in order to move into higher densities to learn our karmic lessons. I don't see the use in having it done for us.
Well, now, okay, I get that. All right. But polarity is a galactic experiment. It was a rule put in place in this galaxy. It is almost imbalanced the universal consciousness, because the galaxy was imbalanced, and that reverberates throughout the rest of the universe. It's got to get corrected. And if we aren't going to correct it ourselves with all of the assistance that we're being given, it's going to get done for us. And I don't know when that is. All I know is, from my perspective, okay, take it for what it's worth. It's just me talking, okay?
Yeah.
From my perspective, I can see the universal consciousness saying, enough, we're done. You know, all experience is good, okay? Everybody wants all of the experience. The whole ascension of consciousness is the name of the game here, because that's the energy of the universe. However, at some point, you have to just say, okay, that's enough. This has to end, because it just isn't going to end unless you absolutely just draw a line in the sand somewhere. And I don't know where that line is. And I don't know if we'll see it in this lifetime or not, but I know that there's a line. From my perspective, I see a line.
It's very interesting to consider, and I can see, I could see how that could be what is going on. That just no matter what, this does have to come to a conclusion. So if we can't do it ourselves,
if you give negative polarity every opportunity to turn to the light, every single opportunity to turn to the light, and it refuses to turn to the light, if they can't be rehabilitated, they're going to be reset.
what does that look like? Are those consciousnesses taken to a different galaxy to be rehabilitated? Are they taken?
No, their energy, they're wiped. So if you're a fifth density negative consciousness, you are going to the galactic center, you're going to lose all your excess density, and you're going to start back out as a third density.
Single photon?
No, you're a third density consciousness.
Oh, it's a third density.
And you're going to start again in Earth terms as a caveman, you know, wearing a loincloth, trying to figure it out. That's, you know, after every opportunity, after every possible assistance is given, at some point you just have to go, okay, well, this is what's going to happen. And, you know, if I was a negative consciousness, I would definitely turn into the light because I wouldn't want to
They
lose all
know
my
that?
experience.
Like, do the reptilians know that's what's going to happen if they don't change?
Well, it's not just the reptilians; they're just the ones that we, the biblical
Like,
stuff,
who
the
else?
demon and Satan and stuff is the reptilians. They're
Well, but
just
they're
one
real. They're
facet of,
real beings. Like, do you believe that?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but they're just one facet of negative polarity. There's a
Okay.
whole lot of that far into separation. I can't even see that far. I don't know if they know that there's a solution or not. They just are fighting to maintain
Do what
what
they
they
do.
like.
Right.
I don't know. I can't speak to that. I'm not a
What?
negative
Yeah.
being.
No, it's just an interesting question to ask. What might that event, if there is an event, whether it's this year or 100 years from now or whatever, what might it look or feel like? It just like energy waves and pulses, or like would it be geological events or
Consider consider the negative polarity that has been steeped into this planetary consciousness over just the recorded history that we have. And we know that it goes back farther than what we have recorded. All of that negative energy has to be cleared. And if it's all cleared when these waves come through, there's going to be some physical manifestation of that rebalancing occurring. And we can look at the surface of the planet and see that it's been shaped by cataclysmic events
right,
before
right,
that are
right.
so that are biblical in proportion, that they've done these great things. That we can look at Google Earth now and we can see where the water was just rolling all over everything.
Right.
And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know. And I don't want anybody to focus on that, because if you're on the ascending timeline, first of all, you have to be, or you wouldn't be listening to this show. The other thing is
That's true, though, isn't it?
it's not going to be that bad. So don't worry about it. Everything's going to be fine.
And that's kind of what I've felt with things. Not only do I do regressions to other planets and past lives, I do a lot of future regressions with people too, where they see their future and the future of the planet. And like what people see in the 2040s and the 2050s, it's pretty similar in a lot of these, where it's a highly technologically evolved planet, but there doesn't really seem to be any more of this tension or war or friction or fear. It seems like it's been overcome. And some people see it in the 2040s, some people see it in the 2060s, but it's pretty soon. And but we're in a very technologically advanced planet. What I see is that I see the return of Atlantis Lemuria showing itself in a very real way over the next really 5 to 15, 20 years, where the cities, New York and Boston and Philadelphia, et cetera, cities becoming very Atlantean, where it's highly technological. You go into your apartment complex by swiping your wrist, with the microchip in it, and the microchip has your banking, your bank accounts and your social credit score and all that, and your vaccine, status. And you go to the store, you swipe your microchip to buy stuff. There's a digital cryptocurrency based economy, where, and a lot of people rejected that and ended up out in the countryside building these more Lemurian type communities where people live together and do organic farming and raise animals together and sing and dance and live more of that Lemurian lifestyle. And I see that separation coming, because it's like we have to karmically live out Lemurian Atlantis a little bit over again, just to merge all, maybe it's part of the timeline merging or whatever, just to get all this figured out so we can actually, experience the full ascension on the planet. What do you think about that whole idea of like separation of different ways of life coming?
Well, I'll just tell you what my response was at when you were talking about chips in your arm and all. I was thinking that ain't going to be me. So I was really glad.
Oh yeah, and I'm the same way.
I was really glad you said that people
Lemurian
be living.
world,
Yeah, people be living in the country. I was like, okay, I'll be that. Yeah, because I'm not going to be in that Atlantean
Yeah,
city.
no, I me too.
Swiping
Yeah.
my hand in cryptocurrency in it, because that doesn't work for me. I'm too old to embrace that kind of stuff. I'll stick with my cassette tapes and record players.
Well, I will. Cryptocurrency is an incredible thing, and I don't know how much you follow it, but it really is building a new Earth economy. It's the alternative to the economic system that has ruled this planet forever. Now, a lot of the same negative polarities have their hands in both. However, it just allows the opportunity for a brand new economy to be created, which is exciting.
Yeah. However, if there's a pulse that's coming across the planet that wipes out every electrical appliance on the planet, your cryptocurrency is going to be about as worthless as the appliances that don't work anymore, don't you think?
Yeah, but you see this sort of pulse coming like soon.
I can't say. I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't see it happening like that. I see every time I look into the future with clients and myself, I see a highly technological society where our planet becomes kind of an amalgamation of Sirian, Arcturian, and Pleiadian societies. The Sirian and the Arcturian planets, it's highly technological, but the technology is all something that's very life-giving and it's integrated. And the Lyrans that have the thought ships, for example, where they can just sit in this like little room and create these thought ships that can travel to other places. It's like it's the biological integrated with the artificial intelligence, yet in a very positive way that's productive for the collective, rather than how it is right now, where we see glimpses of that. But like Tesla cars is a great example of that. But we also see the frequencies of the 5G and the 6G, whatever, having negative effect on the biological organism. So that's what I see. I see a highly technological society coming where people can kind of choose if they want to live more in the technological, Arcturian, Sirian sort of, cityscapes, or more out in the Pleiadian countrysides. Because really, we have such a mix of starseed. The three biggest starseed populations on the planet, as far as I know, is Pleiadian, Sirian, and Arcturian. It would make sense that we would kind of create our home planets here on the new Earth.
Now, when you're talking about these ascended colonies, these ascended collectives, again, we have to take into consideration the expanded energy of consciousness. When you're talking about thought ships that are being sent out, these are fifth density capabilities. We can't quite contemplate what that looks like from a third density perspective because we don't have that energetic mental capability yet. Conscious capability, not really mental, it's our consciousness. Once we start to integrate the fourth density awareness and abilities, things will start to shift and our technology will shift with us, and it won't be quite as oppressive as it feels right now, because sometimes our technology is used in ways that aren't always productive.
I agree.
So in fourth density, there's no more contempt. There's no more, okay, because our consciousnesses are connecting with each other. Telepathy is a thing.
Yeah.
You can no longer lie. Because anybody can read you. You can't lie to anybody else. So
but you wouldn't want to at a certain point when you're operating from the heart and just the love frequency that's connecting us, right?
And as soon as you take that away, as soon as everybody understands that lying is no longer a capability, that whatever someone is saying is the truth, then trust starts to come back.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
And then people start saying, oh, there's a chip to put in my arm for my currency and for my this is very beneficial because you understand that there's no ulterior motive.
Yeah,
because there can't be.
That's oh my God, you nailed it. Like I think that's what ends up happening on the Ascended Heavens. We embrace the technology as a part of us because the trust is there that we know there's not a force, a negatively polarized force trying to control us.
So that would be the thing that shifts this. And that's where we start to move forward. So whenever we start talking in these futuristic timelines, we have to keep in mind the energy of our consciousness and the things that are going to change in our consciousness that allow us to either embrace or understand the technology for what it is. And at that point, we can make an educated decision because there's no more subterfuge, because lying is impossible.
Fascinating. Yeah, right. I love it. What do you, if you had to guess, like, for example, one of the things I do, I'm a tarot reader. And when I do a future tarot reading for someone, It's like, okay, what we're doing is we're tapping into the collective field and seeing what is the most likely timeline based on, you know, the trajectory of the person's existence. So if you had to guess, your best guess based on the current timeline that we're at, what does life look like 50 years from now?
I have no idea.
Really?
I won't be alive at that point. So, you know,
Why
I
not? Why
hope
not? Why wouldn't you be alive in 50 years? That seems
I
silly.
don't plan on living to be that old.
You just feel like
Oh,
coming here, doing your mission, and leaving?
well, to be perfectly honest, I'm kind of tired of being here right now, but I still have a service to perform. So I'm going to perform it. And in each day that I'm here, I try to find the beauty and the love of being here. You know, the simple things, the little birds in my bird feeder, you know, watching animals
That's
play.
literally one of the biggest joys of my own life is my bird
Right.
feeder.
You have to find the beauty in the construct because there's a lot of beauty here, you know. And sometimes when I get a little down with how we're treating each other in the world, I'll watch the birds, or I'll watch the animals, and I'm like, their existence is totally oblivious to anything we're doing. They are
Yeah,
living out their lives
they're just having a
just the
good time.
way they're meant to be,
They're just
with
having a
no
great time.
concept of what we're doing as humans to each other. And the same would be true of an anthill. You watch what's going on in this little ant colony, and it has all of this stuff that's going on, all of the hierarchy of everybody carrying out their little mission there. But nobody else cares about what's going on in the anthill.
Mm.
So, you know, part of my thing as a Roman is when I was murdered, I went to the Senate at the time and I was watching them argue what they were going to do because I was very prominent in that time.
So
And they
after
had
the
to,
death, you still hanging
after
around?
my death, I hung around. I
Yeah,
watched my funeral, and
yeah.
then I watched them argue about what they were going to do. And then they all decided that I was going to get sick and die that suddenly, so that my followers wouldn't revolt and overthrow the government.
Hmm.
And I was just offended. I was like, they're
Yeah.
like ants, man, scurrying around trying to figure out what to do. I'm out of here. I'm done. And I left. And that's when I went off to fight that alien war thing.
When you describe that, this is interesting. You describe it as a linear experience. For example, like I was a Roman, then I fought the Ant War, then I'm Todd, then who knows what's come next. So how is it possible? And I know this is possible. I'd love to hear your explanation of how do we have that linear experience of I was then, and yet we're jumping around a different space-time envelope, so to speak, or in
Well,
different times.
because we are a toroidal sphere of consciousness,
Yeah, and that's what we
right?
got to talk about this
And
toroidal
and
sphere.
we are going through our experiences as a consciousness, regardless of what timeline or what planet we're playing on. We're still experiencing things one right after the other in time space. So this thing that is me, that is Todd, is a composite of the Roman guy and the bug fighting guy and the
The
Viking
hundreds of
guy
others.
and a whole bunch of other people that I have been
Let me
over
just
the
stop
years.
before I forget one real quick. In your first book, it says that it requires three incarnations to ascend from the third to the fourth, right? I will say that, correct?
No, I understand. When I said that, I said it's highly condensed. There could be hundreds, thousands for you to
This is
achieve
what I was going
balance.
to ask because, like, I've never seen a client that has had like only three or four. It's usually in the hundreds, and some people over 1,000 lifetimes just on Earth.
Well, imagine I was trying to draw a graph that would fit on a 6x9 page. If I was to try and incorporate, 2,000 lifetimes to make it the fourth, could you imagine how big that graph would be?
Right.
That's why in there it says this is a highly condensed version
Right.
of, yeah.
So it's a minimum of three. Like if someone were to excel really, really quickly, be like a prodigy
Nobody is going to move from third density to fourth density in three
and
lifetimes.
three
It's
left.
not possible. You won't have the composite density to do so.
Right. So it is usually in the hundreds on Earth,
I
right?
would, yes, yeah,
And
oh yeah.
and you're now, do you go because when I do these readings with people, I'll see, okay, well, part of the reason why your daughter hates you in this lifetime, well, in another lifetime, you were pretty nasty. You betrayed her or you hurt her or whatever. You were a nasty being, right? and you were a nasty being in that lifetime and accumulated karma. You got to balance it out in other lifetimes, right? Now, if we're saying like, I was this, then this, then this, is it possible that, okay, I was a bad guy, then I was a good guy, then I was a bad guy, then I was a good guy? Or does it not usually work like that?
Well, I mean, it can work any way you want it. If you're a bad guy, that means you're embracing a negative polarization. It's unlikely that you would be a bad guy and then turn right around and be a good guy. And I say that, and then I think of someone who's done that exact same thing in a session that I just gave.
Because once you go back to the afterlife, aren't you then, the way I see it is, people are sitting in that higher aspect and they feel regret for being the bad guy, but they understand why they did it because they wanted to experience that. And then from there, they really have the choice to balance the karma however they want to. And there's different possibilities.
That is true. So if you are embracing the negative polarization, it is unlikely that you would be a bad guy and then be a good guy. You would probably be a bad guy and then a badder guy.
Several times.
And then a worse guy.
Oh, no, I'm talking, but just like normal human, like
normal person.
Like I've been a bad guy. Every one of my clients has been a bad guy in at least 3 or 4 lifetimes.
Yeah, but what's a bad guy? I was a Viking. I mean,
hurt people, maybe killed people in a life, betrayed people, did bad things, etc.
Well, okay, so when we're planning our life, and a lot of people speak to this, when we're planning our lives, we have little guideposts that we come up to, little flags that we put in our path.
Right. Yeah.
Potential avenues that we're going to take. Okay, so all right, I'm going to plan to do this early in life, but if I don't do that, then a little later in life, I'm going to plan to do this, and then we're going to.
And you can about balancing karma. At least this is the work. This is what I've been studying for 10 years, trying to figure out. Is karma so important? That's why we encounter these flags, because there's something we have to resolve.
Well, now
by learning lessons through experience.
Now, in my books, we dispense with the term karma, and we start talking about polarity inside the polarization envelope. And there's that image, the cross section, where there's 4 quadrants, and you are in the negative quadrant, and then you're trying to bring yourself back into balance into the center of the tube, which is the non-polarized center, so that you can continue to move forward at the most opportune pathway.
And that exactly, I love that. And that's just kind of a model, a technical model of like what I'm seeing with people's experiences, in balancing karma. I love that.
So when the whole term of karma is, some people are like, yeah, man, that's instant karma getting you.
Well, it's not that simple. It's not, because that stuff is planned out. It's planned out from the afterlife before the major stuff, at least.
Well, but you can also go completely off your path, right?
Absolutely.
You can fall right into the darkness of the alleyway of a drug dependency.
But usually it's unlikely. What I've seen is it's unlikely. I think it happens in a minority of cases. I think the way that souls plan out lifetimes is not perfect, and that's an interesting thing. I should ask you what your conceptualization of a soul is. But anyways, the way I see it is souls are not perfect. They can make mistakes in planning out the life plan, but usually the character, I'm the character, follows kind of along where the soul wanted to go. And the soul puts in different paths and possibilities and different things that'll happen to correct the path if necessary.
That's going to depend on how much energy of consciousness you have and how evolved your consciousness is.
So the less evolved, the more likely you'll just see a shiny object. Oh, let me just make money through greed and through manipulation, and you'll go that way even if it wasn't what was planned.
This is how we learn. We learn these experiences, and the more experience that we have making mistakes, the less likely we are to make mistakes in the future, because when we start to make those, we will feel the resonance of not wanting to be there.
Like ideally, when you have a lot of bad, I'll use the word karma because I use it in my work, but whatever people want to call it, from other lifetimes, ideally, I think the soul said, all right, let's resolve as much of this karma as we can this lifetime. And in your model in the book, like bringing that, that piece that has gone out from the center back into the center of the tube, right? So
Right.
it's neutralized, right?
Yep.
So, as much as we can, but then it's really up to the character how well they do in learning the lessons along the way and making the choices that are more aligned with love, with higher dimensional, higher frequency choices. And then when they exit the lifetime and plan on a next one, it's like, all right, the life review is like, okay, we planned to do all this. You did 70% of it. You did pretty good. So this is what's left over. How are we going to create a lifetime where now you have the opportunity to balance the rest of that, so you can really free yourself from all that karma and just be into the ascension, fully in the ascension path without the baggage. And I do have clients that, not a lot of them, but some of them who are bodhisattvas, and they come into this life with almost no negative karma, and they're just really they have a clean slate to just create. And but most of my clients come with a lot of negative karma, and these are the people that have horrible childhoods and they're abused, and a lot of rough stuff.
If we make we come up with our own ideas on how we're going to rectify and resolve our issues from past imbalances. So, everybody's different, and it's why we're individualized consciousness. That's why there's trillions and trillions of individualized consciousnesses, and no two are the same, because the opportunity to make mistakes is right there. You can follow your path perfectly or completely miss it. It's all up to you. Free will. It's what you get to do.
Do you believe that in your first book, it says that you can be taken out by negatively oriented consciousness, meaning like someone could be randomly murdered and it wasn't in the life plan?
Yeah, that's an infringement. That happens. This is
does happen. See, that's something that I've had a hard time buying, to be honest. I've had a hard time buying that something that severe would be possible.
Just think about that for just a minute.
Because we have guardian angels that keep us. Like, why do some people get saved by a guardian angel during myself? I've had this experience twice of when I should have been in a pretty catastrophic car accident, and something moved the wheel for me in a certain direction, and I was saved twice. Once that happened. The other time, the car just dematerialized. That was about to hit T-bone me, dematerialized for a second, and then appeared in front of me. And I have a lot of clients who have experienced the same thing, where a guardian angel saved them. Why do guardian angels sometimes save people from things that aren't supposed to happen to keep them on their life plan? But then you can also be infringed upon without a guardian angel saving you. That doesn't make sense to me, but I want to hear your perspective.
It can happen. It can happen. Come on. Look at all of the serial killers throughout history, and there's a whole bunch of them.
And I would say there's some sort of contract there. There's some sort of karmic contract.
No, infringements happen.
Okay. Maybe I'm just asking, but yeah.
You can accidentally slip and fall. You can accidentally fall off a ladder like I did and hurt yourself. It happens. However, my injury could have been life ending for me, but it wasn't. So did I have a guardian angel, or did I just get lucky? I tend to think that, I had a guardian angel. I would have liked it a lot better if I had my levitation abilities in place and I could have just floated down to the ground. That would have been better, but that didn't work out for me. But my perspective of this is, sure, a lot of us have guardian angels, and I can look back on periods in my life where I have been extremely lucky and would swear that something has worked for me and moved something that could have been, debilitating or life-threatening out of my way. But at the same time, if you're a vibrational match to a negatively polarized entity that is just looking for a happenstance, wanting to kill something, you can be infringed upon. It can happen. And you'll find yourself on the other side, and you'll be like, I had so much more to do. Sorry, your life was ended by this person. Now, that doesn't mean that in the next lifetime that there won't be a balancing in that somehow.
You know what? Hold on.
It's going to have to balance out.
I'm actually agreeing with you now because I'm literally like I'm seeing one of my past lives. I did a past life regression the very early on in my spiritual journey, like 12 years ago. And one of the lifetimes I saw, I was in Mongolia. I was like a 3-year-old child, and these guys came in on horses and just killed everyone. And I can feel how that's like an infringement, where even though it happened and it may have been an infringement, it doesn't mean that it doesn't need to be balanced in some way. And those people, both sides would then have karma that needs to be balanced in some way through lessons. But I do think that sometimes it is a contract. And I'm wondering if you agree, because I've seen it in people's regressions and in readings that there was a contract. If someone in their life was murdered, or that there was actually a contract there.
Yeah, probably because it happened in the reverse. And
yes, that's exactly what happened in the example. Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, but
so
somebody
it can
had
be
to,
either or. Now I totally agree with
but and
your book.
there was
It can be either or.
Something had to start that cascade.
Yes, that starts the karmic process. Then it's got to keep playing out some way until it's resolved.
Because I did not agree to be murdered as a Roman, because that was something that was not supposed to happen.
Okay.
Because I had a lot more to do and I was infringed upon, and I was really upset about that after I was dead, because I still had so much more that I wanted to do for Rome, and I didn't get to do that. And Rome turned into, Caesars and crap like that, and we can see where that's got us. But anyway,
what is the soul?
A soul is a toroidal sphere of consciousness. So we start as seeds in a planetary consciousness. They are donations from the planetary consciousness as a single photon.
Didn't you say in your book it could also be from the system consciousness sometimes? Did I miss it?
It would be from the planetary consciousness. You need to have the baseline signature of the planetary consciousness so you can move into the planetary collective. So you're going to start with that. You're going to start with that baseline energetic wavelength of the planetary consciousness, and you're going to move up through the basic organisms into more complex organisms, eventually working your way into, and this is all in my first book, into a third density consciousness, where the seat of consciousness that goes down the center becomes self-aware. The second book explains what the seat of consciousness is and why it is the perspective of self-awareness and what makes self-awareness. At that point, you have a barrier membrane that's strong enough for your self-awareness to begin to be, self-aware. You start planning your own life. Before that, you instinctual habits within the creatures that you are is second density, relatively smart, but still second density entities, until you hit self-awareness. And at that point, you start to make your own decisions. Now, the planetary consciousness.
Real quick, because I know people probably wonder, because second density consciousness, these are animals, right?
Usually. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
usually.
Your dog, my dog, they make their own decisions. I mean, they're within obviously, kind of a structure that you've given them for their life, a paradigm. But they're sovereign beings. They can choose to chase a squirrel or not. Is that a self-aware consciousness then? No,
that they are second density.
They're second density.
That's correct.
But they're self-aware. What categorizes self-awareness?
Do you understand? You understand that you are here. You understand.
You're not just existing. Like a bird is just existing, but they're not thinking. They're not contemplating existence.
A bird isn't planning its lifetime. It's not saying. It's not saying I want to grow up to be a doctor, or I want to be a lawyer, or I want to be a soldier, or I understand that I've only got about 100 years here before the body dies, and then something else happens that I'm not sure what happens yet, because third density consciousness isn't aware of what happens after it dies. That's self-awareness. You understand I am, and that at some point I won't be anymore.
Okay.
And I am self-determined. I can decide to, live under a tree, or I can decide to try and make my way in the world and be a gazillionaire in charge of Amazon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is self-determination. That's third density consciousness right there. That's self-awareness.
Okay. And then from there, the fourth density consciousness, which is where we're moving to right now.
That's
So
right.
what's the subtle difference between that and third?
Okay, so in a third density consciousness, first of all, we begin in a planetary consciousness that is buffering the energy for us, because otherwise we'd never have the opportunity to move from first density into third density and have the barrier membrane.
And for
Okay.
those of us that are star seeds, it's not Earth, that because this is not our original planet. We've come here through fragmentation.
That's right.
Right.
So the term in the book is organic consciousness, would be organic to the planet.
The Earth seeds, for example.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. So at fourth density, when you are beginning fourth density, the barrier membrane that is surrounding your consciousness, your energy, and this is in the second book, has begun to expand beyond it. You're starting to feel outside of your barrier membrane.
Right.
That's why when you come in contact with other people that are fourth density also, that are at the boundary of fourth density, you're going to feel their resonance. You're going to either resonate with them or not. And when you get good at this, you're going to be able to have conversations with them that aren't vocal. We're not going to have to use breath speak anymore, which is what the ascended call this. This is breath speak. And then you no longer need breath speak, you turn to mind speak. And at that point, you are having conversations through the energy in your consciousness. It's telepathy. Yeah. And that's happening because the energy within you, your density, has reached the point that the energy is expanding beyond your barrier membrane, and you're starting to feel the first tingles of unity consciousness. That's fourth density.
And we're right on the precipice of that right now, essentially.
We're at the beginning of that. Okay, so we are consider an engine that has a governor on it, and we're only allowed to go 80 miles an hour right now. We haven't quite got the fourth density energy for us to use yet. We're bumping up at the edge of third density, and we're starving for gas. If we were an engine, we're like, we need more because we're ready for it.
Yeah.
And when we move into fourth density, that barrier is unlocked, and that's when we start going faster in consciousness.
Okay. And real quick, just to clear up one thing, and then I'll wrap it up for us. But one thing I had mentioned earlier, I was talking about, doing these Starseed Discovery sessions and seeing people, they see themselves on another planet, Sirius, Pleiadian planet, whatever. Then they see themselves, fragmenting essentially and also existing simultaneously on Earth. Now, you said that you need a sixth density to require that. So at that sixth density, are you still able to physically incarnate if you choose? Is it a choice, or how does that work?
Sixth density is in the collective. You're in the energetic collective. If you want to incarnate, you're going to do it by fragmenting and putting a portion of yourself back into a body. You're not going to put a sixth density consciousness into a body. Fifth density has the choice to either incarnate or stay energetic. And sometimes they project their consciousness into the energetic while they still have a body. You can do both in fifth because it's a transitional density.
Yeah. So I think, so real quick, I had a client recently, we did a starseed regression. She was on a Syrian planet. She saw herself in this temple, this crystal temple with 12 pods around a giant a violet crystal that was glowing. It looked like some sort of amethyst or who knows what it was on this Syrian planet. You would go lay down in the pod, and basically a piece of your consciousness gets sent through this crystal, through whatever wormhole or whatever, down the densities to Earth. And you would come back every once in a while to kind of give more energy to that fragment. Is that something that you could see as being a possibility in your work?
I've never heard that before, but I would say that what's occurring is that they have fragmented and they are still there. And that in dreams time, in the astral, when the consciousness, consciousness never sleeps. Body needs the rest, brain needs the rest. Consciousness, that's why we dream, because consciousness doesn't stop.
Right.
And at that point, it is probably recharging from its higher aspect, recharging the consciousness in the body, because this is exhausting.
So what and what she had said was, because I asked, because she was channeling pretty clearly, and I asked, wouldn't it be overwhelming, confusing to be living a life physically on this Syrian planet, and yet you're also existing in this earth realm? And she says no, because it's just your point of attention and awareness. And if you wanted to check in with that earth self, you can, but you're not going to see it unless you want to. Just like, and then I added, just like when we dream, sometimes people have recurring dreams, and you go to bed on a Tuesday and you have a dream, and then you kind of check in with that dream again on Friday, and it resumes in a way. And it's a similar thing where you just check in when you want to. You can experience that connection when you want to, but it's happening anyways. And it's in a different timeline, of course. It's in a different space-time envelope, whatever you want to call it. Does that sound accurate?
Well, the fragment that is sent to Earth, we have an operative consciousness. We call it ego here, but our operative consciousness is the operating program of the fragment, and it is native to whatever planet it's on. So obviously it grows just the same way anyone else does, from a baby into an adult.
Is that its
the
own
higher
toroidal
self
field? Is it its own toroidal field on Earth, and then there's a toroidal field of the consciousness that fragmented to create it? So,
yes,
yeah, that's what I thought.
that's exactly what happens.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So, and in the example,
in
the example I gave you, would you say that would be a fifth density experience or a sixth density experience?
It's going to be a sixth density entity in a collective that is going to fragment into the third density.
So that sixth density would have a fragment in both the fifth density as being a physical Syrian incarnate and the third density on Earth. Would that be accurate?
Yes, it could do that. I would tend to think that the Syrian entity is probably sixth density and not fifth density. And I think that if you explore that deeper, you will find that that's the case, that the entity is actually an energetic body, being manifested in this energetic crystalline, whatever it is because that's what we tend to see, is we tend to see these crystal buildings and these nice, shiny, shimmery things that look all crystallized. But when we look closer, we're going to find that it's an energetic construct that's being created in a collective.
I don't want to take too much of your time. Let's leave off here and let's resume for part 2. Thank you for being willing to do that with this point. And people, please, I want people to comment below questions, comments about this first part, and we'll try to address some of them on the second call. I've seen so many visions of my Syrian self, and I get so many clients see that, and it's an absolutely physical experience. So out of the hundreds of these starseed regressions I've done, probably 80% of them seem like physical experiences, and 20% of them seem like more etheric.
It'll be both. You'll be incarnated in fifth, and you're going to be here too, and you're also going to be on the sixth. That'd be the answer.
So that's the answer to the riddle.
That would be, if it's incarnated and you're actually physical, then
right.
Yes.
So there's a sixth density being that's kind of in the astral of the planet, and it has a fifth density physical being, let's say on a Syrian planet. And then also from that same mother conscious, so to speak, there's a third dimensional. But can the fifth dimensional Syrian being decide? Because that's what we get a lot in the regressions, that basically it's kind of a choice, like, hey, I want to go do this. Is there a point where you can be so aligned, like with your sixth dimensional piece, that you could almost consciously decide to fragment?
You can't bring the fifth density consciousness into third density. You're going to have to leave a portion of it behind. You can't have all of the density of fifth density here on Earth.
And you leave it behind in a physical body there, or
you would have to leave it. You'd have to leave it in a collective somewhere. Because if you brought your fifth density energy here into a human form, you'd live like a god. You'd be floating. You'd be creating. You'd manifest instantly. That doesn't work here, because you'd be singled out. You wouldn't get to live a normal life. You know what I mean?
So you leave some of it in the collective, that sixth density collective of that planet, that Syrian planet, so to speak.
Yep.
And you can still be existing as a fifth dimensional being there, fifth density being, and yet there's a third density piece. Is it possible, because this is what I see in the regressions all the time, that fifth density piece is aware of the third density piece on Earth?
Yeah, okay. It would be.
Then I think that solved the riddle for me. Hopefully it solved it for you guys below. Please comment I want to see.
I
I
will-
want to see 50 comments on this video. I want everyone to ask questions, you know, about all this, because
If you posit a question in the comments of the video, I will do my best to answer it.
yeah, and we can address them also on the and the
True,
second
yes.
second part. Todd, thank you so much. Thank you. I know we went well over 2 hours. I had a feeling that would happen. There's so much to talk about, and there's so much to talk about in part 2. And I really appreciate you being willing to come on again. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Sure, I enjoyed it.
Good, wonderful. Okay, everyone. Please, if you haven't already purchased these books are incredible. Again, my favorite spiritual books I've ever read. You can see how excited I am talking about all this stuff. Expansion for Ascending Consciousness. This is book 1. Expansion for Ascending Consciousness, book 2. The Amazon links are in the description box below. And please, if you've read these books and you enjoyed them, please do Todd a favor. Go on Amazon and leave a review. Tell people on Amazon what you thought of the books. He would really appreciate that. So thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Thank you, Todd. And we'll resume this in about a month. Namaste.
Okay.